definitely. So circling by definition is not therapy, but tons of people have healing and therapeutic, cathartic experiences through the practice for sure. And that's a beautiful byproduct of the practice. But it's essentially about connection and authenticity. So it's about adults coming together to the best of their ability to be truthful in the moment, to make space for what's alive in each other, and to explore the connection between each other. And I do think connection is healing. And there's obviously a lot of wisdom in the therapeutic world that the therapeutic relationship is at least the most important thing that happens, the connection itself. So there's huge crossovers, and they're coming from subtly different places. That really makes a difference. Like an extreme example was I had someone who had actually been in psychiatric care, and in the early days we were extremely open, with partly through confidence about the practice, partly the arrogance of youth, of like, yeah, let's let everyone in, and this is amazing. But I really did see a positive of like, when the difference of being in psychiatric care when they're being medicated and told like, this is what's wrong and this is what you need to do, to like, hey, in this environment, you need to take self-leadership. Like that's the essence of the practice. It's we're connecting together, and there's an invitation to speak what's true for you in the moment. And you could see her eyes light up when I explained this to her, because it's like she's kind of been given responsibility in a way, and she showed up amazing the whole day. Like it was beautiful. And obviously, we had some pretty intense learnings over the years of some of the depths of dynamics and that people can have where this practice maybe isn't the best thing, or how to serve people best isn't always an open, like having very strong boundaries and confronting people. And they were things we learned more as time went on. And it was an interesting one, because in a way it was, circling is like, can be better than therapy. Maybe it can have therapeutic impact, but also build connection between people and build self-leadership. And like, wow, maybe it has this. And I still believe something in that. And then at the same time, after a few years, like I really needed to go and do some really high quality therapy for a few years, and also train in deeper trauma work. And that was just so valuable to learn more deeply from that paradigm, and integrate that wisdom into the circling paradigm without having to change it. So that was really cool. Not that we wouldn't change it, like we want to go with what's best, but it was like, oh no, with this seeing now, we can actually make the practice can just be even better. Like we don't have to, like we can become aware of more resources that are actually here that I maybe wasn't seeing beforehand, and bring attention to that rather than necessarily like digging into some anger that's there and trying to get that out. Or so that was a real learning. Me and Sean did the NARM, neuroaffective relational model, kind of grew out of somatic experiencing. Dr. Lawrence Heller, but I think it's quite cutting edge stuff. Him and Gabor Mate, they did an interview, and they're really kind of I don't know if stumbling is the right word, but discovering similar depths that kind of game changing, knowing some of those kind of human archetypal patterns and ways to work with trauma.
Yeah, I think this conversation is actually really interesting. The therapy and circling and how it interacts. And, I'm also familiar with the NARM approach. That was one of the books you guys recommended, was Healing Developmental Trauma. And actually, my wife has a therapy business, and I work with her. She has a bunch of therapists working with her, and I'm very interested in mental health. And I'm like always, the therapists are always training in new modalities and new things, and that's like one of the things I'm like, oh, circling would just make a therapist so much better. But at the same time, it's interesting how you went and learned these therapeutic things and integrated them and expanded on your toolbox. It seems like there are overlapping things and there are some things that are different. But just like kind of looking at this process in a deeper way. And, you mentioned that the trauma becoming like being trauma informed. And this kind of segues into my next question of like, do you believe there are any potential problems or dangers around the practice of circling? Like you've maybe seen in your own, where it was like there was at an edge, or you wanted something to go, like you wanted things to be healing and like not hurtful, but somehow it backfired and it was like, oh, I'm actually beyond my depths here. Or maybe you just see this happening in other communities where people don't have as much experience with circling. They're not as skillful at it, or they don't have the trauma training. They don't understand, and they're just being like very direct, and then somehow it backfires.
Yeah. I think just before I answer that, when I did the NARM training, the other thing I enjoyed was that they actually use a non-goal orientation framework. So what separates them from a lot of other therapies is actually more of a presence-centered thing. So that felt like, oh, the wisdom that's shown up in circling is showing up elsewhere. And I think that really makes therapy better.
That's also like, I don't know if you're familiar with the diamond approach, but it seems like a lot of that also diamond, it's like what's here now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and where NARM the therapist in NARM doesn't reveal themselves very much. That's where circling gets a lot different, where it's like, we'll just show, even when we're in the facilitator role, we will skillfully, if it's good, reveal what's alive in us.
Yeah, that also, that's an interesting part, because I work with the therapist, and I'm constantly just thinking about how they can grow and develop as therapists. And one of the things is the revealing bit. It seems like a lot of the way they're trained is not to reveal and not to share, and it's all about the client.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, the psychotherapist, Carl Rogers, I think he had this whole thing where he would say that if he was triggered during a session or something was really coming up, he would name it. And I believe Jordan Peterson also spoke about this in his sessions with his clients too. If something was there, like bothering him or triggering him, he would name it. And I'm not sure, because I'm not a therapist, right? I'm not sure. But it seems to me like there's something powerful in the revealing and naming what's there, even if it's uncomfortable or unpleasant.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious of like, just how to integrate that into therapy skillfully, where revealing may actually be beneficial and
right.
better than not revealing at all and just being like this, you're on the couch and I'm psychoanalyzing you and I don't ever share anything.
Yeah, that's definitely my stake, that there's a way to improve most therapy through skillful revealing at the right time for various reasons. The intricacies of that are still to be explored, but I'm confident that that's true.